What's happening, everyone? My name is Jake, and welcome back to another episode of Real Chats with Jake. Today, I'm sitting down with Rob Lott. He is a performer, a director, and a podcaster, and we are still talking about the Black Lives Matter movement, specifically within the theatrical industry. Today, we are talking about when it's okay to say no to a project. So if that is something that you're interested in, please stay to the end of the video. Give this video a big thumbs up. Also hit the subscribe button. And if you don't mind, I would really appreciate it if you shared this video to get the narrative across to more platforms and more people. Without further ado, let's jump into the video. Welcome everyone to the fourth installment of Real Chats with Jake. I'm Jake. I'm joined with the lovely Rob Lott. He is a...
I am lovely. Look at how lovely I am. Look at this. I don't normally look like this. I'm sorry, I interrupted.
No, the quarantine look is looking great on you. Before we started recording, I was like, wow, Rob. It's becoming a lot. But with all that, Rob is a director, a performer, a podcast, is it creator? What do you call someone?
Podcaster.
Podcaster.
I'm a podcaster, yeah.
Content creator. We have all these names now. He does podcasts, he performs, he directs, he's very, very creative. The podcast that he started, the first one was the Leading Creative Podcast, which is super great. It's talking about leadership and creativity. And then you just started a new one with your sister, right? Let's Talk Soon, which I love it because it's a brother-sister, the banter, and it's funny. You guys hold each other accountable. It's really great. So I'll put the link to those podcasts in the description below so you guys can check out Rob's stuff. So, before we begin this conversation, I wanted to preface this whole interview with anyone in the room right now watching this video can obviously see that we are both white males about to talk about racial inequalities and racial injustice. And I have to say I was very apprehensive to even invite anyone that wasn't of color or black onto the series, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement, because, obviously, who else is going to talk about that from a perspective of color or of being black than people of color and being black? But I was talking with someone that actually requested I sit down with Rob, and they were saying, white people right now need to teach white people. We keep asking, what can we do to help? What can we do to create a conversation? And sometimes, unfortunately, in this world, we sometimes people that of mindset that is not as open tend to only listen to people that look or sound like them. So with that being said, I think I can only speak for myself, but I feel a sense of apprehension and a little bit of anxiety going into this. But I also think that it's coming from a place of let's have a conversation and try to teach as many people that we can. So with that, Rob.
Well, let me just jump in because I agree. Before we pressed record on this, we were both just kind of like, okay, here we go. And I appreciate what you said about white people teaching white people, and I'm nervous from a place of I have not always gotten it right, and I know moving forward I'm not always going to get it right. And so from that place, it's what I have committed myself to is learning, and what I have committed myself to is learning publicly, and not sitting quietly, not sitting on the sidelines, but putting myself out there, getting into some awkward, clumsy conversations.
Right.
And so, this might be awkward, this might be clumsy, what we're about to do, but at the same time, I want to get. I want to help. I want to be a trusted ally. I do believe very much this is not the time. You said that my voice was requested, and that is very flattering. I do believe that now is not necessarily the time that white people need to be putting themselves into the forefront to say, here's how everyone needs to feel about all of these things. But at the same time, white people holding other white people accountable, I think that's okay. And so, like I said, awkward and clumsy. Let's jump right in, and see what happens.
Right, absolutely. Okay, so the conversation that I want to have today with you is more from a directorial background. Um, Rob is a coworker of mine, but he is also in a position where he is one of my leaders. He has given me notes, vocal notes in this case, but you also do outside jobs, directing and stuff. Um, so, in the sense of being a director, the first question I have for you is, you get the call that you're directing a show, and what is the first thing that you do?
Well, I think you talk to any director. The first thing that you do is you read the play, you read the script,
Right.
And hopefully, if I have thrown my hat into the ring to be considered to direct a show, hopefully it's because I have identified with something in the script, something in the story that I go, I have a perspective. I have a perspective from which I can tell this story. I think I have an interesting angle, a creative angle, an angle that will be most interesting to an audience, to this audience today from in this time. But at the same time, in terms of, okay, I get the call and okay, now you are actually going to be directing the show. I'm going to read the script again and go through it now, really not from usually when I read the script the first time, it's from a place of I'm pitching myself to be the director. Right. But then once I get the call that I'm going to do it, now I'm pitching. Now I'm reading the script from a place of okay, what are the directorial views? What are going to be the problems? What are going to be the right. things that the hard to find props or the given the venue, what is going to be the difficult storylines to tell in a given space and a given time. So that's the first thing that I do, and then I'm going to, based on what the script is and the story that we are telling, whatever my weaknesses are, and I think this pertains to the conversation we're having here today. Whatever my weaknesses are in the storytelling, that's what I'm going to go and pursue. Find somebody who that is their strength.
Right.
I have long said that what I love about directing, one of the things that I love about directing, is actually leading the team, the production team that puts the show together. I know just enough about everything theatrical. I know just enough to be dangerous.
Right.
And so I'm not a lighting designer. I'm not a costume designer. I'm not a choreographer. I'm not a writer per se. But I know just enough about each of those things that if I were to take the helm, it would be bad. Right. It would be done, but it would be bad.
Right.
So similarly, what I love so much about directing is leading the team. I always say that the team is well-rounded because its members are sharp. And so gathering a team together to tell the story, that's going to be the next thing that I do, is identifying who needs to be on the team. So, right. So yeah, does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you kind of answered this next question. And anyone watching this is seeing the lead into some of the preface to some of the bigger questions that we're about to ask. But the second question I had is kind of what you talked about, is what are the resources that you use in preparation to direct? For those of you who don't know Rob always walks into the dressing room with a book. Always. Rob, he's always reading, and I don't understand. Yeah, Rob has sent me a couple books, and I'm like, I'm not a reader, but Rob has a very, very interesting, he is very educated. He is always, from what I can tell, I can't speak from, I don't know your SAT score, but I always love having conversations with Rob, because he always has, this book was talking about this, or this quote from this person. So kind of going into that, what are the resources you use? Is it just book? Is it just print? Is it other human beings? Do you do interview? What are the resources you take?
Yeah, I remember hearing years ago, if you want to be a great actor, if you want to be a great director, if you want to be a great artist, don't read about your discipline. Don't read about your craft. Right. Read about everything else. And maybe you can dabble. I have a handful of books behind me that are about acting.
Yeah.
I don't actually love reading those books. I want to jump to the next level, and the books that I really enjoy reading are the ones about directing.
Right.
because, and I think that, you know, if you jump to the next level actually, and you're reading about directing, then you have, if you learn those things, then you have the capacity to direct yourself, and you know
Right.
what a director is
Right.
looking for, maybe.
Right.
And so instead of reading about acting, that's from the inside out, which there's value
Yeah.
to that. But I think if you are reading about directing, then it helps you build kind of that outside eye for yourself.
Yeah.
So I have long believed, like, read about everything else. And so I read about creativity and I read about leadership, most specifically, because whenever you read about those things, those individuals who have written those books, they have experiences well far out beyond my discipline of theatrical stage work. So that's the majority of what I read is nonfiction. And somebody asked me the other day, do you ever just read for fun, like pleasure reading, like fiction? I think is what they were trying to get at, and I was like, no, I don't.
But I think also to your point, like you sent me Big Magic, right?
Yeah.
That's what it's called, Big Magic, and it's a fantastic book, and it's about creativity. But you know, I don't normally read for fun, but reading that book, even though it was about creativity and that there was no plot, it was fun to read. So I think there's also a sense of when you are diving into something, you know, right now someone asked me like, why did you start YouTube? Why are you so invested in photography and your cameras and stuff? And I'm like, ultimately I went into a commercial shoot and I was in front of a camera and I didn't know what to do. So now that I have, you know, a system and I understand what it's like to press record and talk to a lens opposed to talking to an audience, learning about that specific subject has helped me, you know, perform. It's helped me go into other things. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's kind of the idea you're saying with you are a performer, you're still a full-time performer 100% of the time, but when you are going into something, you have to look at other points of view so that you can be better at other things other than just your one thing.
So in regard to the original question, what resources do I use? You know, I use all the same stuff that all the other directors use. I find out about the history of the play. I find out the history of the characters, especially if it is based in a true story. But oftentimes, especially like, you know, there are shows that take place in certain time periods, and it's nice to know what is going on beyond the proscenium.
Right.
And to help people understand, hey, this just happened historically. This might be where people's minds are and on stage. And so have that in mind, you know, for your backstory as I'm talking to actors.
Right.
So I use, as far as resources, that's what I use. And then also, I spend a great deal of time. I learned a number of years ago, I get a certain amount of credit for being pretty good at motivating people, for kind of giving that rousing speech the night before opening. But where I learned how to do that is actually from a lot of smaller conversations that led up to the big rousing speech.
Right.
And it's that if I seek out conversations with people, and it's my responsibility to kind of sell them on the show, or to get their perspective on the show and say, hey, here's what I'm going for. Here's my heart on this. And if I'm having smaller conversations with people, maybe who have a different perspective than me, they might be able to go, hey, have you thought about it this way? Right. Or, you know what, I hear what you're saying, but the way that you're saying it isn't very clear, or the way you're saying it, frankly, just, I don't think it sounds the way that you think it sounds.
Right.
And so maybe hit it from another perspective, maybe think about it this way.
Yeah.
So having those other conversations leading up to the big rousing, pre-curtain speech, so to say, I think it's just having those conversations is also a resource that I use to be able to get to the heart of the story that I'm trying to tell.
Absolutely. So those two questions kind of led into this bigger question, is so your approach to direct a piece that has or is about material that is not from your background, whether that be race, sexual orientation, religion, gender, go on, and you know, you can create there's a million different shows about a million different things. So what is your determining factor into say yes, and what is your determining factor to say no? And if I can add this layer onto, just instead of it being so broad, let's pick a specific show. Like, I'm going to ask you, Rob, you are now directing The Color Purple. What is your That's the call. What is your reasoning either to say yes and or reasoning to say no?
Okay, so it's funny that you mentioned the color purple. I literally, as I was talking about this, I got these questions ahead of time, and so I have had a chance to think about them, think about my answers for them. And I was chatting with my wife about it just last night. I was like, hey, let me kind of go through some of these questions and stuff. And literally, the color purple came up,
Yeah.
and I said, you know what? I feel okay. I feel like I can direct Hairspray. I have a perspective for Hairspray. I think I could do well with that. I would want to build a team to make sure that that we have voicing coming from all angles, make sure that we're telling this story well. But I think I could have a good perspective to direct Hairspray. Color Purple, I can't do it. I wouldn't do it. I would not raise my hand to direct The Color Purple. And if somebody called on me and said, Rob, we think you're the guy to direct The Color Purple, I would say, why?
Right.
Why do you think I am the guy? And I think even if they were able to convince me that, well, here's why, because of this in your background, and because of this, and because you approach things this way, we think that you were the guy. I think I would still direct them. I know that I would still direct them in another direction. If it was a matter of, yes, we have the cast, yes, we have a venue, yes, we have all of the things that we need, and Rob, you were the only one to direct it. If that was so far beyond the case, if that actually happened, I go back to, okay, I need to build a team to educate me. I need to build a team that actually, I have a number of people that I rely on. I think that in regard to my team that I work with most regularly, I think some of them at certain times will go, yeah, it's kind of funny. Oftentimes you'll see Rob just kind of standing off to the side. He's not really doing anything because everybody is doing their own work. And I think if I were to be named the director of a show like that, first off, I would go, I don't think I'm your guy.
Right.
But second, if they said, no, you have to do it, I would go, okay, then I'm going to find a team of people and actually kind of hand the show over to them.
Right.
Because my perspective, I don't have the history, I don't have the perspective to be able to tell that story well.
And I think something that goes along with that is we as performers, we as actors and directors, I would assume anyone in the creative field, we tend to latch onto a job offer because it's a job offer. We live job to job. We don't. I mean, look at us right now. Like, we are struggling. What was that post where it's like the most unessential jobs #1 was artist, and you're like, well, who created this picture? Who created this format? This diagram? But it's true. We tend to take jobs as they are. Like, I have no money, so I need this job. But now we are progressing into a very, I think, a positive way of thinking of taking a job based on our own morals and what we believe in. Like, I'm never going to, if someone was like, we want you to play this, Hispanic or this, whatever, like, I'm not going to take that role no matter if I'm starving on the street, because ethically, to my own morals, it's not right. We've seen this in certain people have said, I shouldn't have taken that job because of this, and we've all had those moments in our life, whether it be about race or we've all taken a job because we needed the job. However, now I want to direct the conversation with, it's okay to say no sometimes. It's okay to, like you're saying, like, it's okay to say, you know what, I would love to direct this show. I'm honored that you thought that I would be great at this. However, I don't think that my background will portray the story correctly. You always say, like, we tell the story, like, we are the storytellers. And what Joshian said last week was, the director is the leader. The director is the person that is helping cultivate this story, but ultimately the people on the stage are the ones telling the story. So if you are doing The Color Purple, the people in that cast are telling the story, but how are they supposed to tell the story if they're being directed to do something differently than they feel in their heart because they've actually lived it.
Yeah.
So with that,
Well, and can I go and add something back to what I just said? I think if they, you're absolutely right. I think if, again, the scenario that I created where I was absolutely the last choice, the last and final choice of director for, say, The Color Purple, I would push back and question, why do you feel the necessity to do The Color Purple if I am your only option of a director?
Right.
This might not be the time. Maybe you need to go do a search, and find the right director, because it's not going to be me. And maybe now is not the time for your theater to do this show if you cannot find a director that has the right perspective.
I honestly couldn't agree more. We see that, I think, a lot in Hairspray, especially in high schools, because Hairspray is, I think that is one of the most relevant shows that our generation and kids know, because it's a fun, lighthearted show, but it's dealing with a lot of sensitive racial material. And I think a lot of high schools think, oh, well, the movie came out, like it was on Broadway, it won Tony Awards, like we see covers of it, show choirs do it, let's do Hairspray, but you don't have the cast. So then you end up creating a different storyline of, oh, well, it's not the new kids and Motormouth and her gang, it's like the popular kids versus the nerds. Like, we create this new storyline that was never intended to be created. Yeah. And piggybacking off of what you just said is, if I was a high school director and the principal came up to me and said, hey, we want to do Hairspray. And then I would say, well, I don't think we have the cast to do it. Well, we have plenty of kids of that background to cast. Well, not all of those kids are going to come out to audition, nor do they want to be in the show. So let's do this instead. What about this option? I think so many times, especially high schools, jump on, oh, well, this is going to sell tickets. This is popular right now. Kids are going to be interested in it. And then we redirect this show into something that it's not, so that we're either politically correct or we do it completely not politically correct. And it's a lose-lose in both situations. So I think exactly what you're saying, like, if I'm the last option, or if this is the last show that you can come up with, what are your reasonings as to why? And also with that, I would assume, I don't want to speak for you, but I would assume, Rob, we have to do The Color Purple because this is the reason why. There is no other option. You are the only person that we have. I feel, this is just me knowing you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I don't want to speak for you, but knowing you, Rob, I think what you were saying about surrounding yourself with a team and resources that are going to help give the best product at the end, you would probably ultimately find someone that is Black or someone that has done the show before and said, hey, listen, I want you to be my co-director. I want you to be here. I want you to spearhead this. Even if I pay you what I pay, like, I think, knowing you, like, it's all about doing it the right way, but also doing it in a sense of, this is morally what I feel. And if you are going to put me in this corner, I still have the ability to say no and or create change by saying, okay, well, if this is what we're having, then these are my terms. We're going to have this person come in and actually direct it,
You know what I would do? If they said, Rob, nope, it's you, you're the director, I would go, okay, let me find my team. And then in finding my team, I think I would find another director.
Yeah,
go,
exactly.
Hey,
here we go.
Look what I found.
Right.
Look at what we got here. You had mentioned values. I believe very much in deciding what your values are ahead of time, so that when opportunities come up, you've already decided. Whenever, it's always funny to me when a great opportunity comes up and somebody goes, I need to think on that. Let me think on that. Well, if you've already decided what your values are, and you can run it through any number of filters, life values, spiritual values, racial values, leadership values, creativity values, whatever. You can run it through any of those filters, but know what your values are ahead of time so that when the opportunity comes up, that is within my values, yes, happy to do it.
Right.
I have the time, I have the space, I have the bandwidth to be able to do this. That is within my values. It's a yes for me.
Right.
But then also on the flip side, when somebody goes, hey, we have this opportunity for you, you look at it and go, oh, this is not within my values.
Right.
And if you've decided ahead of time, it makes it a whole lot easier early on to say yes or to say no. But you have to do the hard work ahead of time and continually of reminding yourself what those values are.
And I think also right now the whole reason I started this kind of series was to, I think it's okay to know that values change. And you know, unfortunately up until this movement really exploded, like we still saw people taking jobs, we still saw directors giving specific notes, we still saw quote unquote quotas being filled with what we talked about last week with like, oh, we're only going to fill this cast because of we need an ethnic, you know, diversity quota that we're going to fill. Whether it's said or it's unsaid, it's very seen. So yeah, we're treading on thin ice here, and I don't want to say anything wrong once again. But yeah,
it goes back to, and it's been shared a whole bunch. But the idea of the Maya Angelou quote, you do the best with what you know, but then when you know better, you do better.
Right.
And I think a lot of casting directors, and this is why I say I haven't always gotten it right, and I won't necessarily always get it right.
Yeah.
But I am committed to learning publicly, and you know, hopefully we can have some grace and some forgiveness for each other when we get it wrong.
Right.
But I think a lot of casting directors, I think a lot of directors, I think a lot of actors, artists of all kinds they were doing the best with what they knew.
Yeah.
And now it has been brought to their attention that this is not the way that things should be done.
Right.
And so now that they know that, they need to do better. We need to do better. You and I are very fortunate. I think that we do work for a company. We do the dominant work that we do is for a company that is very forward thinking in their casting, and is very aware of making sure that the right type goes with the right role.
Right.
And when type does not matter, then diversity rules.
Right.
And so that is it. That's a value that our company has, and that's something honestly that I'm proud of. I'm super proud to be a part of a company that operates that way.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying, going back to that quote, the Maya Angelou quote, everybody was doing the best with what they knew.
Yep. But
now that they know better, we all need to do better.
And one of the reasons, once again, why I started these series is because if you don't know better, here are some resources as to learn from it. You know, like each conversation I have with someone, I'm taking and I'm learning from it. I didn't see this in society. I didn't see this in my job, or I didn't see this in my friend group, but now I'm seeing it. So now I have the ability to take that and see it and learn from it and try to fix it, or say, oh, well, that doesn't pertain to me. And so, I couldn't agree more with you on that. Now, let me jump on a real quick question I didn't give you.
Okay.
As a director, the only reason I'm going to ask this is because we've talked about this in literally every single series that I've done with this. You're a director, and not that you specifically would ever say this, but let's say a director says this: be more urban. What would be a better way for you? I mean, ultimately that note is saying, like, I want you to be more, you know, on the streets. You lived a harder life, which can be very racist when it comes to, like, if you're giving that note to a person of color or a black person, like, oh, you want me to be more ghetto? Like, that's the way it comes across. What would be your advice to other directors or people? You know, they say don't give a line reading because that's not going to help the actor. What would be your advice on a note just like that or around that ballpark?
I learned a while back, and I'm certain that I have messed this up in the past. I'm certain that I've given an off the cuff quick note to somebody that was mistaken, misunderstood in terms of the way I said it. I'm sorry. Let me not say misunderstood, but rather the way I said it. It was understood exactly the way I said it, and I didn't think it all the way through.
Right.
I didn't think my notes all the way through. A couple of things. I always write my notes out the way that I plan on saying them. That takes some time, but it takes some time while you are watching a show. It takes some time to write out what you plan to say to the individual or about the scene altogether. But when you write it out, there's clarity will come out of what you have written.
Absolutely.
And so I will write out literally a full sentence describing the change that I would like to scene, the change that I would like to have made, the adjustment that I would like to see. And in writing it out, that kind of helps make sure that, oh, Rob, what you just wrote right there, make sure that you're the only one who ever sees that.
Right.
Rip that page out and tear it up and burn it up when this is all done, because you don't want anybody to know that you wrote that. Right. Even though it may have been the top of your mind, and that might have been the quickest way you could think to give the note, it's not the right way to give the note.
Right.
So that's one tip. The other tip is that I tend to give the notes not to an actor, but to the character that they are playing. And so if you give a note to the character, then, which is not, I'm not stepping into their world. It's not that way. But to say, Jake, in this scene,
right,
and they start describing the character,
right,
and what the adjustments that we're looking for in the character, not the adjustments I'm looking for in the actor.
That's really funny that you say that, because I've never realized that. But every note that you ever, it's always Jim. It's never personal. It's always from the character's point of view. So that's great. I didn't realize that until now. Now when you give me notes again, I'm gonna be like. But yeah, I think that's going off of what you said is like sometimes it's the easiest way, because that's the way that we've either heard it before, whether we've given it before or we've heard it from another director, or it's the most efficiently produced, like the verbiage.
Yeah, the what is it? The economy of words.
Yes, the vernacular of it.
It's
yes.
very succinct.
Yeah.
Or it's often. I saw somebody talking the other day about, like, hey, some of these terms are actually musical terms. They are musical styles, and when we ask you to sing in this style, we are saying, like, this is a style that has existed for a long time, and it is now being deemed racist.
Yeah.
Okay, so things change over time, and I think oftentimes, this is, like you say, it's an efficient way of talking about it, because when I say this word, everybody knows what that means. When I say sing it in the style of this, everybody knows what that means. But the problem with that sometimes can be that, it's not. Maybe it's time to change.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Maybe it's time to adjust what that is and find a new succinct way to say it.
Absolutely.
Wouldn't that be great if that was something, as leaders, for me, I talk a lot about leadership and creativity. As leaders, if we took on the creative mantle of going, we're going to find new ways to describe these things.
Yeah.
And again, might be clunky, might be awkward, might take some time, and we might need to continually describe ourselves, or even to say, you know what? I don't know. I'll leave a space here. Let me know what your thoughts on this. Yeah. Even to say,
Future Jake here. So, as you see Rob kind of hesitant in this moment, we were originally going to edit this part out. However, Rob and I both decided that in the spirit of authenticity and the commitment to learning publicly, we were going to leave it in. It's interesting to see Rob in a real-time moment taking an adjustment and correcting himself.
This would have been described in the past this way. We're not using that language anymore. Here's what I'm looking for. And from now on, when I don't know.
Yeah. No,
don't include that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying. Obviously. Okay. So we are nearing close to our time limit, but the last question I want to ask you, Rob, is, you kind of answered this throughout the entire video, but I guess in one short phrase or one sentence, what advice are you taking right now to better educate yourself when it comes to directing in the future?
Yeah, I am not. I raised my eyebrows earlier when you said I'm well educated. I am not classically educated. I jumped in and started doing this work right out of high school. And so I did not go to school for any of this in terms of higher learning. These books that you see behind me, this is what I've done, is what I knew. I wanted to just jump in and start getting some experience with it. And so I read, yes, you mentioned earlier, I read a lot. And I read on leadership, creativity. I read on marriage. I try to read a biography of a leader or a creative somebody all the time. I read on spirituality in terms of my beliefs and all of that. And so that is what all of those books are in continual rotation all the time. I read about 5 to 6 books at a time. What I have added to that is reading from authors who are people of color. And people who have a different perspective of me. I realized the other day when it came time to, I was looking for a new book and I wanted to read something. I have a whole bunch of books on my shelf that I've not yet read. And I was going through going, okay, I want to find something that is written by somebody who doesn't look like me, who doesn't already have the same perspective as me. And I was looking, and I'm embarrassed to say, I could not find any. In terms of the books that are on my shelf. And so I looked at the, in terms of the subject matter that I am interested in and the subject matter that I want to learn about, but finding out from a different perspective and hearing from a different author, that is important to me. So I went to Amazon, I found all the books on the list, and all of them are sold out. Beautifully right now,
which is a great problem to have. Yeah,
it is. So I am in the queue to when those books come available again. There's going to be just Amazon delivery after delivery after delivery in front of my house. But yeah, just adding that voice into my into what I'm reading regularly, and then just also taking a position of student, not a position of teacher, not a position of leader all the time, but a position of student, not a position of critic. That's hugely important. I've said before, people tend to not like that which they don't understand. We tend not to like the things that we don't understand. And so instead of not liking things, let's make sure that we know as much as we can about them before we speak out against them. Absolutely. And so being a critic is off the table right now. My job right now is to be a student. And so I'm sitting back, I'm staying quiet, not so much in this interview, but in my life, I'm sitting back and staying quiet and listening. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to say what you just said. You're sitting back and being quiet. You're doing it in the appropriate manner. And what I say, when I say that is, a lot of people saying, not speaking out. You are speaking out. You are posting. You are engaging with it. But it's okay to sit back and learn and not say anything, opposed to I've been in this position to teach or to lead, and now I have to be quiet. And I think there's a very, very big difference in that. And I once again, I applaud you for coming on here and taking the time to talk about these kind of uncomfortable questions and situations that we are now dealing with. But ultimately, moving forward, we're only going to learn by talking about these. So once again, Rob, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. Once again, I'll put a link to his podcast in the description below, as well as his Instagram. So go check him out as well. All right.
Thanks, man.
Thank you so much. Rob, thank you so much for joining me on this episode. I really think that We covered a lot of great topics, very uncomfortable topics, might I add, but I think it is out of the best interest that we just continue to share what we have learned and what we are continuing to learn. Loving what you're saying about taking the position of student and not the teacher. If this video deemed worthy of being shared, I would really appreciate you sharing it, as well as giving it a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button right there. I hope everyone is remaining safe. Please thank our essential workers working so hard for us right now. Remember to register to vote. And always remember, there is nothing to prove, only something to share. I'll see you guys in the next one.